Let me show you something worth noticing. There's a specific kind of discomfort that shows up when you're scrolling through social media or talking to someone at a reunion or lying awake at 3 in the morning. It feels like you're behind, like everyone else figured out the map and you're still trying to orient yourself, like there's a pace you were supposed to keep and somehow you fell off it without noticing when. But if you sit with that feeling long enough, if you really examine what's happening in your body when it arrives, you start to notice something strange. It's not actually about being behind. Behind implies a race with a clear route and a finish line. What you're feeling is something else entirely. You're feeling the absence of certainty about whether what you're doing matters. Most people never make this distinction. They feel the discomfort and immediately translate it into comparison. She bought a house, and I'm still renting. He's been promoted twice, and I'm in the same role. They're married with kids, and I'm not sure what I want. The comparison feels like the problem, so that's what they try to fix. They try to catch up. They try to hit the milestones they think they've missed. But the feeling doesn't go away when they do, or if it does, it comes back in a different form. What's actually happening is more fundamental than comparison. You're navigating life without a reliable feedback system. In school, the feedback was constant. Tests told you if you understood the material. Grades told you if you were on track. Graduation told you that you'd completed something. The feedback wasn't always accurate, and it wasn't always meaningful, but it was there. It gave you a sense of position. Then you leave that structure, and suddenly the feedback stops. Or rather, it becomes ambiguous and delayed and sometimes contradictory. You work hard at your job, but you're not sure if it's leading anywhere. You invest in a relationship, but you don't know if it's the right one. You make financial decisions without knowing if they're wise until years later. You're constantly acting without confirmation that the action means what you think it means. This creates a very specific kind of psychological strain. You're making consequential decisions in the dark, and the only way you know to evaluate those decisions is by looking at external markers: money, titles, relationships, possessions, achievements. These become proxies for the feedback you're missing, not because you're shallow or materialistic, but because you need some way to know if you're doing this right. The problem is that these markers are terrible feedback mechanisms. They tell you what you have, not whether what you have matters. They tell you where you are relative to others, not whether where you are is where you should be. And because they're comparative by nature, they make you feel like you're in a race, even when there's no actual race happening. Someone who feels certain about their direction doesn't need external markers the same way. They might want them, might enjoy them, but they don't need them for orientation. The person who feels uncertain needs them desperately, because without them, there's just this void where confirmation should be. And the void is intolerable because it means you might be wasting your life and not know it until it's too late to correct. This is why the feeling of being behind intensifies when you're already unsure. If you're confident in your path, someone else's success might inspire you or bore you or not register at all. But if you're uncertain about whether your path even is a path, their success becomes threatening. It suggests that their way is correct and yours might not be. It raises the question you've been trying not to ask. What if you're doing this wrong? The interesting thing is that the people who seem furthest ahead, the ones who trigger that feeling in you, many of them are experiencing the exact same uncertainty. They've hit the markers, but the markers didn't provide the confirmation they expected. The house didn't feel like arrival. The promotion didn't feel like validation. The relationship didn't feel like resolution. So they're still looking for feedback, still wondering if they're doing it right, still feeling some version of that 3 a.m. disquiet. This means the problem isn't really about being behind. You can catch up to every external marker and still feel exactly what you're feeling now. Because what you're actually feeling is the fundamental strangeness of being an adult human trying to construct a meaningful life without any authoritative source telling you whether you're succeeding. When you're a child, adults provide that authority. When you're a student, institutions provide it. But when you're an adult yourself, there's no higher court of appeal. You have to generate your own sense of direction, and most people were never taught how to do that. So they default to using other people's directions as reference points, which makes them feel like they're behind whenever they deviate. But deviation isn't the problem. Deviation is inevitable because you're not them. You don't have their history, their psychology, their constraints, their opportunities, their desires. Following their path precisely would require being them, which you're not. So, of course, your trajectory looks different. The question isn't whether it looks different. The question is whether it's coherent, whether it's yours, whether it's taking you somewhere you actually want to go. And that's the question most people avoid because it's terrifying. It requires you to decide what you value without external validation. It requires you to choose a direction knowing you won't get clear feedback about whether it's right until much later, if ever. It requires you to sit with uncertainty while everyone around you is projecting confidence, real or performed. What makes this harder is that society is structured to punish visible uncertainty. People who seem sure of themselves get more opportunities. People who hesitate get passed over. So there's enormous pressure to perform certainty even when you don't feel it, which means you're surrounded by people who seem confident but might not be. You're comparing your internal uncertainty to their external performance, which makes you feel uniquely behind even though the experience might be nearly universal. The feeling of being behind is also self-reinforcing. When you feel it, you tend to make decisions from a place of anxiety rather than intention. You chase things because you think you're supposed to, not because they align with anything real in you. This often leads to choices that don't quite fit, which creates more uncertainty, which intensifies the feeling of being behind. The cycle feeds itself. Breaking the cycle doesn't mean eliminating uncertainty. Uncertainty is structural to adult life. You can't know in advance whether your choices will lead where you think they'll lead. You can't get external confirmation that you're on the right path because there's no external authority qualified to give it. What you can do is change your relationship to the uncertainty itself. Stop treating it as evidence that something's wrong. Start treating it as information about what it means to be human. The people who seem most at ease aren't the ones who've eliminated uncertainty. They're the ones who've accepted that they're navigating by dead reckoning. They've made peace with the fact that they won't know if they chose well until they're looking backward. And even then, they might not be sure. This doesn't make them passive or directionless. It makes them less vulnerable to the comparison trap because they're not using other people's coordinates to plot their position. There's a strange freedom that comes from realizing that Everyone is uncertain, and most people are just better at hiding it. It means the confidence you're comparing yourself to is often performance. It means the sense that others have figured something out that you haven't is probably an illusion. It means you're not uniquely lost. You're just experiencing the normal condition of being an adult without pretending otherwise. This doesn't make the feeling disappear. You'll still have moments where you look at someone else's life and feel that pang. But when it happens, you might recognize it for what it is. Not evidence that you're behind, but evidence that you're uncertain and you're using their life as a measuring stick because you don't have a better one. Once you see that mechanism, you can choose whether to believe what it's telling you. What's strange is that the feeling of being behind often intensifies right before something shifts, right before you make a decision that actually aligns with something real in you, right before you stop following someone else's template and start building your own. The discomfort isn't always a sign you're off track. Sometimes it's a sign you're about to get on one, but you can't know which it is in the moment. That's the uncertainty again. All you can do is pay attention to whether your choices feel like they're coming from you or from some imagined standard you're trying to meet. Whether you're moving toward something or just away from the feeling of being behind. The direction matters more than the speed, but speed is what everyone measures because it's visible. The comparison that actually matters isn't between you and them. It's between who you are now and who you were before. Not in terms of achievements or milestones, but in terms of clarity. Are you more clear about what you value? Are you more honest about what you want? Are you more able to make decisions that reflect something real rather than something borrowed? That progression is almost invisible from the outside, which is why it doesn't resolve the feeling of being behind. But it's the only progression that actually changes your relationship to uncertainty. Some people hit every conventional marker and still feel lost. Some people follow an unconventional path and feel grounded. The difference isn't in the path. It's in whether the path was chosen or just accepted, whether it reflects an internal orientation or just a response to external pressure, whether it's yours or just the one you ended up on while trying not to fall behind. The version of you that feels behind is often the version that's still trying to follow rules that don't exist, still waiting for someone to confirm you're doing it right, still hoping that the next milestone will finally provide the certainty you've been missing. But the certainty doesn't come from the milestone. It comes from the moment you realize you're the only one who can decide what right means for you, and you choose to live with the vertigo of that responsibility instead of outsourcing it to comparison. That moment doesn't feel like relief. It feels like stepping off solid ground. But what you discover is that the ground was never as solid as it seemed. Everyone is floating. Some people just look more comfortable doing it. And maybe the goal isn't to stop floating. Maybe it's to stop pretending you're standing on something and learn to navigate the weightlessness instead. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's next.